I've been hallucinating for a while, ever since...
What?
Since I first saw Videodrome.
It will shatter your reality.
Do Einstein's laws endorse ghosts? Now, I saw these articles really kind of come up here recently. Kara obviously read them. I did not actually read any of them.
Kara's the literate one. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Just no, the whole quantum mysticism stuff. Oh my God. But I want to hear what you think.
So actually that was one part of about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I wrote a book titled Investigating Ghosts, the Scientific Search for Spirits. And it's basically a collection of all my ghost related investigations and articles and everything sort of compiled into one with additional stuff and in-depth investigations and case studies and whatever else. And when that book came out, I would kick myself because I didn't include, for some reason, I blanked it, or I don't know, computer demons or whatever else. It wasn't there. I thought it was there. It wasn't there.
Yeah, Gremlins
and Illuminati.
Right.
And so for some reason it was, so I'm like, I have to make sure it's in my next book. So basically, so when you talk to ghost hunters and ghost believers, not necessarily the ordinary experiencers who just have experiences in their daily lives, and they believe in ghosts and they experience ghosts, so they believe, but they're not necessarily ghost investigators. They're not trying to understand they're just like, hey, yeah, all right. So when you talk to people who think about investigating and theories about ghosts, oftentimes, of course, you come up with they quickly come up with some contradictions and some problems they need to get over. One of them is, of course, that there's no single explanation of what ghosts are. I mean, I can give you 3 or 4 different claims by published authors on TV and elsewhere who say, I know what ghosts are, and ghosts are X, Y, and Z. Some people believe that they are spirits of the dead. Of course, that's a common folkloric theme. Other people believe that they're actually mental processes that are projected into the outside world. Other people, if you subscribe to stone tape theory, it's not.
That's the one that I most recently, I saw the television play from the 60s, the stone tape, and I'm just, oh man, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So if you believe in stone tape theory, then it's not that they're necessarily spirits of the dead that can't cross over, but instead that the emotions and bad things, hurt, murder, homicide, bad things, betrayal, things that would appear in Jerry Springer, are these things generate emotions that are then absorbed into the environment,
like scratch themselves onto reality like a record.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
Yeah,
so the idea is that the emotions and anger and passion and whatever are absorbed into mansions and cemeteries and so on. And this is one reason why Gettysburg is supposed to be especially haunted, because, of course, famous battlefields, lots of people died there. We know that for a fact.
Right.
And the idea is that all the death is creating these things. Again, not necessarily the
long, boring speech.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. So anyway, where I'm going with this is that even though there are all these often contradictory definitions of what ghosts are, one of the recurring themes is this notion that there's some sort of energy that's left over from when our bodies go when we die, and that energy is released into the world as spirits or ectoplasm, I guess, in the 1890s. And oftentimes you will see people quoting Einstein, say, well, Einstein proved this, don't you know physics? Right? It's like matter can't be destroyed. It just changes its form.
Right. I love don't you know physics, because my answer is all just like you. No, I don't.
Now that you mention
serious
it,
degree that I do not have.
Right, exactly. And yeah, exactly. Like no. But in fact, I mean, and again, it makes a certain, like we were talking about before, the sheeple factory, it makes a kind of populist sense, like, okay, well, yeah, I can see people want, keep people dumb and they're just that. And it kind of makes sense that if you don't really understand what Einstein was saying, and it's not complicated, but if all you know is that matter can't be destroyed, it just changes form, which is technically true, then you can say, okay, well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah. So you die, and then what happens to you after you die?
If I jump into a furnace, I change form into a bunch of carbon, but that's not going to be animate.
Exactly, right. Right. So
not a living thing anymore.
It's not a living thing, right? And so, and again, this is not, it's not complicated. This is high school physics. This isn't, but again, it's this easy, simplistic, Einstein proved this thing. And again, I quote in my chapter, I quote, prominent ghost hunters, investigators who make this basic mistake. And frankly, it's embarrassing. But as Kara mentioned, the answer, in case you haven't figured it out, because everybody else here has, is that yes, it's true that that matter, just changes form. And so when you die, the energy in your body, as you said, it goes into the environment. The heat in your body escapes. You're cremated, or if you die in the wilderness, animals eat you. They gain nutrition from that. That's the energy. There's no other special spiritual energy that's measurable by science that we can't account for. It's all there. There's nothing missing.
But when you die, like 7 grams of your brain go to heaven.
Well, there you go. Yes, the weight of the soul. I have a chapter on that as well.
Yeah, really. So this is probably a good segue here. This, I have no idea what this is referencing. Can electromagnetic fields create ghosts? Is that's nothing I've heard before, but is that like the stone tape idea?
It's actually pretty close to it. Yeah. So basically, I think Kara knows. She's like, yeah, I know what this is.
She knows everything. She
knows everything. That's right. So yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, the idea, as I mentioned before, even ghost experts can't agree on what ghosts are. But one of the theories is that that the ghosts are created. They're mental images. They're created by electromagnetic fields. And so this is one reason why on TV you have ghost hunters going around with EMF detectors and beepy, blinky things, and oh my God, this is it. And so there's actually a little bit of research, and once again, it is scientific research, but it's sort of misunderstood. So part of the idea behind EMFs, generating ghosts or ghostly experiences, comes from a psychologist named Michael Persinger, who I think died a few years back. I think he was a Canadian guy, I think in Ontario, if I'm not mistaken. And he created this thing he called the God helmet. And it was a helmet that you put on your head, and it actually stimulated different parts of the cortex using electromagnetic fields, which are basically harmless. You don't want to do it too much, but it's. And anyway, so he said, so people who used this device in a clinical setting, and I'll reiterate, in a clinical setting, reported that they did in fact sometimes out of body experiences. They felt weird things, this and that. And so Persinger and many ghost hunters pointed to this scientific research as being, this might be an explanation for it. There's a couple big holes here. The first big hole is that number one, EMFs are all around us. Any electrical device gives off EMFs. TVs, anything with a motor, electricity going through it, there's some EMFs behind it. So if all it took to generate a ghost experience was being near something generating EMFs, there'd be ghosts everywhere. It'd be like every few seconds you'd be seeing ghosts, because we're all bathed more, unless we're walking the park or something, throughout our ordinary lives.
Even in the park, aren't we swimming in one that's protecting us from solar radiation?
Yeah, again, it sort of depends on how general we're going to go here, but there's no connection there. The other thing here is that it's important to recognize that that his device was a helmet you put on your head, right? This is not the conditions under which people are experiencing ghosts. Right. People are experiencing ghosts at night as they're going to bed, at the foot of their bed. So those, even if it were true that inducing EMFs created ghostly experiences, which it turns out it's not, that has nothing to do with ghosts. So that, again, it's another example of how there's this sort of bid for scientific credibility. A colleague of mine, Sharon Hill, wrote a book called Scientifical Americans. And she looks at ghost hunting groups in that book, and she sort of looks at the different ways that paranormal groups and ghost hunting groups particularly, they like to talk about how scientific they are. They like to talk about the scientific process and this and that. But when you ask them, like, what is your understanding of the scientific process? They're like, well, it's like, oh, is that my phone? And it's like, come on,
it's
guys.
a clout thing.
Right.
Scientific
And it's
process.
Fairly transparent, usually.
Exactly. Obviously.
Can a watch survive the Niagara Falls test? Attached to this heavily weighted ball, can this watch take the full impact of the rocks and rapids? It's going over, watch it, down into that raging torrent, buffeted and jolted by the force of that terrific current. And here it is, still ticking away, the world's greatest watch value.